So here I'm performing hip extensions on a 45-degree angle hip extension machine, also known as a back extension machine, depending how you want to say it. There's another variation that I like to use, which is on the GHR machine, where you can do the same exercise just from a slightly different angle as you're seeing here. Hip extensions are hands down one of my favorite ways to target the glutes. It's a great way to get a really good contraction and a good pump. It's also easy to get a mind-muscle connection when you're doing this exercise when compared to something like a deadlift or even hip thrusts. I feel like this is just a way better isolation exercise. Plus you can load it by holding a plate as you see me doing here, or you can simply do body weight. I also love that it has a really good stimulus to fatigue ratio. So basically you can get a great stimulus to adapt to without accumulating too much fatigue. So if you compare this movement to something like an RDL or a deadlift, it's far less taxing on the central nervous system. When doing this exercise, you want to avoid using too much of your lower back. So you don't want to turn this into a back extension, but rather you want to think about thrusting your hips forward into the pad by squeezing your glutes. So you've got to initiate this movement with your glutes. The hamstrings will also play a role during this exercise, but I like to use my glutes as the primary mover. So think about squeezing the glutes before the hamstrings kick in. You also want to avoid creating a lumbar lordosis or an arch in the back. So think about getting a posterior pelvic tilt, so tucking your pelvis under to make sure the glutes are the prime mover. You don't have to go down too low here. I see a lot of people go down so low that they lose tension in the glutes and hamstrings. So go down to a position that you feel tension in your glutes and hamstrings, and also that doesn't compromise your lower back and cause it to round. The end of your range of motion is where your back is still straight with tension on the glutes and hamstrings. So basically, throughout the full range of motion, you've got tension through those muscles. You also don't have to overextend at the top. So as you can see here, my top position is where my hips are fully extended, my glutes are squeezed, and I've got a straight line running from my ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders. So my body is in a planked position at the top of the range of motion. Hip extensions are most difficult at the top of the repetition, at the lockout position where your muscles are at a short muscle length. This applies to both the GHR machine and the 45-degree angle machine. However, it is slightly more difficult at lockout when doing it on a GHR machine because at the top of the rep, your body is perpendicular to the line of force, being gravity, whilst on the 45-degree angle machine, obviously you're on a 45-degree angle at lockout. Both machines are amazing, so I recommend mixing it up from session to session, but I do think it's a good idea to progressively overload on one machine for a few weeks before mixing it up and changing over to the other machine.